My name is Michael Hill. I live in Elby, Washington, out by Mount Rainier, about 13 miles from the park entrance, South Nisqually entrance in Mount Rainier National Park.
And how did you get involved with actions at the Ground Zero Center here?
As near as I can recall, it was in the late 70s, maybe 78. Some friends of mine heard that there was a protest going on out here about the base, and there was a farm down the road, Peterson Farm, that was going to lose part of or all of their land due to access to this new base they were building. And so I don't know who got the thing going, myself and 3 or 4 other people drove out and walked from Peterson's farm up to the old main gate. It seemed like there were, I don't know, a couple of hundred of us, but that's my memory. And we all stood there, and I don't remember exactly what we did, except I remember some people went over the fence, and that seemed like a pretty bold action. My background was as a kind of a pacifist in the '68 convention in Chicago. It was the first time I really got into a real action during the Vietnam War, of course, and the Democratic Convention. And so I have interesting memories of that time, marching down the streets of Chicago saying peace now, and having it echo in the sky scrapers, the big tall buildings, and seeing how the police reacted. So anyway, when I heard about this Peterson Farm thing in conjunction with building the base here, it seemed like a logical thing to go out and just see what was happening. And so I became aware of the base that they were creating here, and that there was a counter group of people that were trying to slow it down, maybe even stop it. And I didn't get real active then. I don't recall that. I don't think we had the Ground Zero house then. I'm pretty sure we didn't. Maybe they had the property, but not the house. I don't really recall. But in the mid-'80s, it became very clear that the base had happened, and they were starting to bring in the missiles and the missile motors and the fuel and all that stuff. And I heard about the white train. The white train was carrying these components from the Midwest, different places where it was manufactured. And they painted it white because that would reflect the heat. They were carrying very dangerous cargo. And people were tracking the train from when it left the plant where it was made, and they were tracking it along the railroad line and giving updates. So, okay, the train is this place, it's that place, it's headed, predicted to be so-and-so. And so the first actions that I really got involved with were around the white train coming, and Jim and Shelley Douglas and other people back then were kind of organizing, let's do some resistance to that. And kind of the obvious thing was, well, it's coming down the tracks right here going into the base, and maybe we should try and stop the train. And ever since Chicago, I've kind of been interested in being on the street, taking action, being where it might have an impact. So the idea of stopping a train seemed like a cool thing to do. So I got involved with an affinity group that met in Seattle. I think it was called the Agape Affinity Group. And we talked a lot about how we could participate in that stopping the train. And we did a lot of nonviolence training. We kind of got involved. It wasn't just, okay, the train's coming, let's sit down in front of it. We did a lot of planning, as did some other people too. And so I forget if it might have been 1985, and I'm not quite sure on the date, but 19 or 20 of us sat down on the tracks, and the train came and the train stopped. There was some nervousness about it. I chose to believe then that the train would stop. I didn't think that it would really run over us, but I remember sitting up towards the front. We sat in twos, you know, lined back from wherever we decided was on this side of the gate, obviously. And I remember being a little apprehensive, but knowing that I was doing the right thing. And the train stopped, and federal officials, after not real long time sitting there, removed us from the track. They actually hauled some of us off. I went passive, and they had to remove me physically. And they put us on a bus. They arrested us and put us on a bus. And sometime later, I don't know if it was a couple of months, we knew we were going to have to go to court. We got released on our personal recognizance. And the short of it is that we went to court for 5 days in Kitsap County in Port Orchard, and a jury of our peers found us innocent. We admitted we did it. There was all kinds of photographic evidence that we had done it, and yet that jury found in our favor essentially because we were honoring international law. We were breaking a minor law to honor a higher law. It was quite a feeling, because I think most of us thought it would be pretty hard to be found innocent. So that was quite an experience. There were some other train actions that I participated in, and eventually that kind of morphed into doing actions at the gates. New Main Gate. I didn't really participate in anything during that era in Old Main. I think that they kind of actually closed that gate, I think, because they were using the Trigger Avenue and the New Main Gate. And so from the mid-'80s on, pretty much this has been the focus of my peace work, being involved in Ground Zero. It's been very satisfying. It's been frustrating at times. I always try and remember, and I'll paraphrase Gandhi's admonition, if you will, that no matter what I do, it'll probably be insignificant, but it's important that I do it. And I hold on to that, because sometimes I get a little, gee, are we ever gonna, how are we gonna deal with this, the whole big picture? And then I'm reminded of what Gandhi said, and Gandhi's one of my 3 heroes, and Martin Luther King was another one, and Joan Baez was really one of my first heroes. She and her mother were active in draft resistance in Oakland, probably back in the late 60s, maybe 67 or 68, back in that time. And at one point, she and her mother got arrested in front of the Oakland draft board, where they inducted the guys down there. And I remember being so impressed that, that those women of 2 generations would put their lives on the line. And one year at Folk Life, I think it was, Joan came to do a show, and I went kind of backstage. It was a fenced off area, but I stood there, and she came out. Actually, her mother came out first, and I got to meet her and thank her for doing what she did, because it changed my life. It got me to be an activist. And she gave me a hug, and she said, well, thank you for doing what you're doing. And then Joan came out and offered to hug me, and I got to thank her too. And it was just such a, MLK had already been assassinated. Gandhi, of course, had been assassinated. So I only had one living hero left. And I got to hug her and thank her and her mother too, so that was really a nice treat. So I continue here because I feel responsible, because Ground Zero gives me an opportunity to participate in standing up for peace. And what I like here is it gives me countless opportunities to be of all kinds of service. I can park cars, or I can wash dishes, or I can be a peacekeeper, or quite often I can risk arrest. I've actually been arrested, I don't know exactly how many times. So I do that periodically. So it's actually, when I go home after this weekend, it'll be a long weekend, I'm tired, but I feel like I've stood up for peace and I've tried to make a difference, and that makes me feel good. Yeah, so even though sometimes it's discouraging, sometimes it's hard work, it's a labor of love, and so I'm in for the time that I have here on the planet to try and make it a better place.
How do you describe this place to people who live in the area and have never heard of it?
Well, because I live 2 hours away, I don't have the opportunity to describe to local people. And if I see an opportunity to share my experience here, back where I live in Elby, Washington, I do that. And it's almost, when I'm here, this seems like the most important thing. And when I'm home, it does too, but I have an easier time relating when I'm here than to people there who, a lot of them just don't care. That's discouraging. I mean, they're unaware. They have no idea that they live a 2-hour drive away from all these nuclear weapons. Sometimes I find it hard to believe that you and I are sitting here very close to the fence, and it's not very far away that the bunkers are where they store those nuclear weapons. So my country's been at war ever since I was born, 1943, and I find that to be unconscionable. And I just feel like it's time to change, to try and change things. So to answer your question, at home I do what I can to spread the word. In the nearest big town to where I live, which is Eatonville, on Fridays between 4 and 6, I'm there standing up for peace with my sign. Honk for peace, peace now, hold the sign. And the reason I'm there is because of Cindy Sheehan. It must have been more than 5 years ago, I'm thinking, I'll have to check with her, when she had an encampment close to George Bush's house, on the road to his house or something. And for some reason that made the news, and the people in Eatonville kind of spontaneously said, hey, we should support her, and on Friday we should all get together with candles on the corner and have our signs and do a peace demonstration. And son of a gun, if 100 people didn't show up to do that. And the impetus for that was Cindy Sheehan doing what she did then and what she continues to do. So for the next 4 years, every Friday there was at least 2 of us, and sometimes as many as 15 of us. It varied from Friday to Friday. And we had every consecutive Fridays for over 4 years. And then it kind of fell apart, people kind of drifted away, and I left town for a few months, and when I came back, I just went back to the corner because that's what I like to do, and I've been there since. So with a few breaks, I guess I've been there on my 6th year now. And we get a lot of going to the mountain traffic. We get a lot of guys coming home from work. It's a busy corner. It's the busiest corner in this town. It's a 4-way stop. And that's very satisfying. People honk, people smile, they wave. If I could take a poll, it's got to be 1/3 to 1/2 of those people are acknowledging me and my signs, not me so much, but the signs. They're for peace. And I think if you asked anybody, they're going to say, yeah, I'd like it to be a peaceful world, but most say, but, we have to have peace through strength, or they have some reason, But ultimately, because I think of nuclear weapons, I think we're up against the wall here. It's bad enough that we're killing people all over the world, but now we have nuclear weapons and more of them, and we're likely to use them either on purpose or accidentally. And So the classic comment here is, well, I want my grandchildren to have a world to live in. And the doomsday clock is at 5 minutes till midnight, I think. And it goes back and forth between 5 to 3 or, whatever. So we're pushing our luck, I think. So it's just what I do, standing up for peace.